Chapter 31 The Circle Tali 32nd Session. When last met, the party said their goodbyes to Renan, then were on their way to the Clear Waters Rest Inn. After a quick chat with the hostess, the party was provided their rooms and given the day to do what they wanted. By this point, it was only noon, but after many days of travel, most of the party members just wanted to rest in their room. So, that's what Sonora, Domitanis, and Joker did. Leste continued to rehearse with Kaun for his unveiling in their room. Nixie spent this time investigating the vine she found at the abandoned campsite, concluding that it's a common ancestor to two Holland plants. Perkring decided adventure was his calling, and wandered out of the inn. Maka caught on to this, so she darted out of the inn, tailing him so he couldn't get into too much trouble. Perkring started out exploring the city, looking for any easy-to-find shinies, which he found plenty of. He found the normal bevy of sparkling rocks and stones that he found in any town, but he also got lucky and found an abandoned gem someone must not have noticed that they had dropped. He was happy with this find, pocketing it, then decided to wander the city for fun. Eventually, he found a large bridge that spanned over a canal that caught his attention. He went up to the edge of the bridge, looking into the water below, and decided to jump off while making an ice platform underneath him to float along the water. Maka noticed him approach the edge of the bridge and jump, but failed to notice the platform form underneath him, as she was too far away. Immediately, she screamed, jumped on her broom, and flew over to the river to try and save Perkring from drowning. She was confused to find him floating on that slab of ice, but she didn't question it. Instead, much to his protest, she picked him up off the ice and returned him to the bridge. From here, she guided him back to the inn with her completely disheveled. Once at the inn, he ran off again, and with her too exhausted to follow, she went to the lobby to relax. By now, Domitanis was in the lobby as well, and the two existed in mostly silence around one another. Perkring ran away this time with a purpose. During the party's last visit, he had heard of a shop called Madame Moore's, and he wanted to see what it was about. He found the shop with little difficulty, and as he entered, he noticed it was practically thrumming with magic. He looked around, then began chatting with the hostess about items sold. Eventually, he found a hat that was far too large for him that he absolutely needed, so he gave the coin for it, then excitedly ran back to the inn, bumping into many things along the way with his new hat that covered his entire face. When he entered the inn, he put on a persona of royalty towards Maka and Domitanis, acting like he didn't know either of them and that they were both beneath him. This made Maka question the concept of motherhood, while Domitanis enjoyed Perkring's playful antics, especially him bumping around, trying to find his path towards the stairs. As he ascended them, Leste heard the commotion and played along with him, supporting his act and supporting him to his room. After that display, Maka decided she wanted to get out on her own, so she went off to the Arcane Researchers, a small building that funded research into magic topics. A busy halfling man greeted her from an adjacent room as she entered. He found his way to her once he got everything resolved, then asked what she needs. She explained that she was looking for knowledge on arcane illness, and he said that he knew of a person named Tetharia that could assist with that, but they were unavailable for the day. To make most of the visit, Maka then inquired about any potions available, and picked some up, thanking the man before making her way back to the inn. When she returned, it was already night, so she, along with the rest of the party, slept off the days of travel they just got done with, then awoke on their own. Except for Domitanis. They slept in the same room as Perkring, so they were greeted by Perkring's call as both awoke. The two then headed downstairs for breakfast, where Perkring took out his oversized hat again and placed it on his head, continuing his persona from the night before. Domitanis still enjoyed this act, but when Nixie came down for breakfast, she found it less enjoyable as she tried to clean up the mess Perkring made by him eating with limited sight. Eventually, Leste came down as well, and continued supporting Perkring's antics. She made a mistake when trying to talk to him, though. She referred to Perkring by his name, but his persona was not Perkring. He was quick to inform her that she was talking to Madame Travingston Rone Lumiere the 25th, and not Perkring. Leste took note of this for the future, then had her breakfast. Once Madame Travingston Rone Lumiere the 25th had her fun, she left to her room. Then Perkring returned, offering an egg to those present. When no one took up his offer, he consumed it instead. While this was happening, Sonora was still sleeping as she was contacted by Balmar, who contacted her via magic. She informed Sonora that the Talian Circle was willing to organize the teleport for the party, but before the party departed for the Circle, they needed to wait for an official letter to be delivered to them that would grant them access to the Circle. With that, she went right back to bed, only for Leste to then awaken her as she was checking up on everyone who was still sleeping. Sonora caught her up on the message she just received, then told her she would be down after she received the letter. From here, the party spent their time in idle chatter until Sonora came down to the lobby of the inn with a letter in hand, one that she found tapping at her window. It had the official seal of Tali, so everyone took this as a sign to start traveling. The roads from Tali to Snowtide were extremely well established, so it took only until nightfall to get to the next city. The menagerie then spent the night at an inn by the name of Skywater's Rest, and as quickly as they came, they left at Perkring's call, pushing onwards to the Talian Circle as fast as possible. After a bit less than half a day's travel, the trees started to clear, and the Talian Circle started to come into view. The first thing the party saw cresting over the horizon was the top of the main tower. It slowly grew in height over the next few hours of travel, continuing to grow each time it looked like the bottom was in view. Long before the bottom of the main tower finally came into view, several other smaller but similar design towers joined in, proudly reaching for the sky. It looked like a city on its own, easily rivaling the capital in size. As the party approached, still an hour before reaching the tower, those magically inclined began to feel waves of magic emanating from the tower and flowing through the air. After another 20 minutes, Kaun felt it too. Then about 10 minutes away, every single party member felt the circle's aura to some degree, slowly coursing and pulsing through them. It was a bit strange at first, especially those not as familiar with the feeling of magic, but everyone grew used to it far faster than they expected, and the feeling eventually settled comfortably somewhere in the back of the party members' minds. The only party member familiar with this feeling was Maka. The sheer size of the Kavaxian Circle capital resulted in this feeling spreading across the entirety of the city, where it's referred to as the Eyes of a Lily, or a Lily's Vigil. The circle is set on an island not too far out from the coast, so the first landmark the party reached was a bridge. There were 3 small watchtowers on either side of the gated entrance into the bridge, with one visible individual as the party approached. If they didn't know any better, and in any other context, this figure would appear unimposing. They were a small, younger-looking half-elven woman, with her exact age being hard to tell. She had dark brown hair, loosely tied into a bun behind her, and she was dressed in simple, comfortable pants, boots, and a dark tunic. The only notable article of clothing she wore was a long, dark cloak. At a distance, it appeared to be a simple cloak to protect against the cold, but as the party approached, a deep and rich purple color with nearly invisible silver embroidery along the hems of the sleeves and collar became clear. She watched the menagerie as they approached. Her stance never changed as they got closer, and members of the party couldn't help but wonder if she was expecting them, or if they simply did not frighten her. Regardless, they were able to approach. When they got into speaking distance, she closed her eyes and nodded her head to the group, gently raising her middle and index finger to the space between her eyes in a greeting, a common and respectful gesture within the circles. She introduced herself as Adarna, noting how she did not recognize the party nor their aura, and inquired what business they had in the circle. Sonora then extended out the letter she was given a few days ago, and Adarna began to read it aloud. The note explained how the party before her was the one that stole one of the airships that attacked Circe, but more importantly were the group that informed Tail of the battle plans that Ragin had for assaulting the Talian Circle. Surprising to the party, this was not signed by Belmar, and instead was signed by the Queen of Tali, who was the one that granted them access to the circle. Idarna then stowed the letter and caused a shimmer to ripple across the closed gate behind her with a wave of her hand. It then slowly opened, and she told the party to head across the bridge, where the circle headmaster, Alcturus, would be waiting for them. As they passed Adarna and stepped onto the bridge, the weather around them stopped. The cold wind of the North Seas died down to less than a breeze, and warmth overtook them. No snow nor ice was present here too, even though it was within eyeshot on the shores and coast. A few minutes of travel on this bridge led to a large and unguarded decorative door to the first tower, which opened of their own accord as the party approached. Behind the doors was a middle-aged human woman with loosely braided brown hair, adorned with long and elegant robes of gold and light blue, who gave the party a knowing look as they approached. She welcomed the party to the circle and introduced herself as Circle Headmaster Alcturus, then asked the party to follow her. They obliged and entered the tower. Inside the tower was strangely grand. What furnitures and amenities there were in the tower were lovely and beautiful, but not overly excessive in quantity or complexion. The walls were adorned with art as well, but it was of varying levels of quality and content, some of which was labeled as student works. Many of the rooms they passed by were of similar aesthetic, with minor changes to accommodate the function of the room. Even as the party entered the headmaster's office, while it was more extravagant to denote the importance of the room, the party couldn't help but feel only whelmed at the strikingly normal decor for someone of such a high status. Headmaster Alcturus walked around an elevated bowl swirling with magic at the center of the room and turned to face the party, thanking them for informing Olive Tail of Ragin's initial war plans. She then gave an introduction of the circle to the party, letting them know that while they will be expecting to financially assist with the teleportation to the Miraday Circle, they were welcome to explore the tower while the mages of the circle spent about a week setting up necessary components for the teleportation. She then ran her hand through the bowl, and from the fluid dripping off of her fingers, 7 marble orbs coalesced in the air. These orbs then drifted to the party as she explained that they would be their guides for the circle. All one would need to do is speak into the orb, and it would guide them to wherever they needed to go. Alcturus then opened the conversation to any questions the party had, which mostly turned into her recommending the party reach out to the other headmasters. Leste was curious about the teleportation and any dragon lore the tower had, so Alcturus recommended reaching out to the teleportation and history headmasters respectively. Nixie wanted to know more about the gardens of the towers, so she was recommended to reach out to the headmaster of runic studies. Maka wanted to learn about divination, so she was told to reach out to the headmasters of holy magic and teleportation, as they both would have information on the topic. Even when Alcturus didn't have a good response to Perkring asking how he could find his cat, she recommended reaching out to the other headmasters. With no more questions, Alcturus recommended the party head to their rooms using the marble orbs. So, they each asked where their rooms were, and the orbs started floating in the direction of their rooms. As they followed, the orbs weaved through the common rooms of the circle to an abrupt stop at a door. They approached the door, and it opened for them into a quaint living quarter, furnished with basic amenities, a couch, and 4 separate bedrooms. The party set their things down, then quickly got to exploring the circle on their own. With that, let us continue.